Stonebridge County, one town torn apart by power, racism, and blood. It all began with a single slap, a young boy assaulted, a mother beaten, a father forced to face a weapon, and yet they fought back. They had no idea. They picked the wrong family. This isn't just a fight for survival, it's a battle for the very soul of Stonebridge. Before we dive in, hit the comments and tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country, your city, wherever you're tuning in. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the next story we've got coming. Now, let's get started. A new dawn in Stonebridge. The morning sun hung low over Stonebridge County, casting a soft golden light that filtered through the trees and bounced off the buildings. For some, it was just another ordinary day in a town that had for years remained stuck in its old ways. But for the Steele family, it marked the beginning of something entirely different, a new chapter in their lives. Judge Malcolm Steele sat in the front seat of the family's black SUV, his eyes focused on the road ahead. He wasn't nervous about his new job. He had spent the past 2 decades on the bench, and nothing could prepare him more than the weight of every case he had ever presided over. But there was something about Stonebridge that unsettled him. It wasn't just the unfamiliarity. It was the deep, hidden tension that seemed to hang over the town like a cloud, suffocating everything beneath it. His wife, Pamela, sat beside him, her eyes scanning the area as they drove. The federal agent had learned to read the subtle cues of a place. The way people moved, the silence between words, the quiet stares that said more than they ever could. Her mission here was clear: uncover the hidden crimes, the things that no one wanted to talk about. She had been sent to investigate the systemic issues plaguing this town: racism, brutality, and the corruption that had seeped into every part of the law enforcement system. Her husband's promotion had been part of the plan, giving her a direct path into the heart of it all. Jaden Steele, their teenage son, was in the back seat, his eyes glued to his phone. He wasn't excited about the move. He missed his friends, the familiar streets, the things that felt like home. Stonebridge felt like a prison. He had heard the whispers, seen the cold stares from his peers. And he knew, deep down, that things wouldn't be easy. When they arrived at the courthouse, the Steele family was met with the steady hum of activity. There was an energy in the air, nervous energy, expectant energy. The courthouse had stood for over a century, its stone walls weathered by time, but still holding on to the echoes of every case it had witnessed. The town's history was written in the pages of its courtrooms, and today, a new chapter was being written. Malcolm Steele's first day on the job. Malcolm stepped out of the car first, adjusting the cuffs of his suit. His face was calm, but inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He turned to look at Pamela, who was already assessing their surroundings with sharp eyes. "Ready?" she asked, her voice steady, though there was an edge to it. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, taking a deep breath. The moment felt surreal, like everything they had worked for had led them to this point. Jaden reluctantly followed them toward the courthouse. His eyes scanned the faces of the officers milling around, the lawyers rushing in and out, the people sitting on the steps with vacant expressions. He didn't know why, but it felt like everyone was watching them, judging them. But it wasn't just the looks. They had an understanding of what it meant to be a black family in a place like this. They weren't wanted. They were the outsiders. Inside the courthouse, the weight of the building's history pressed down on them. Marble floors gleamed underfoot, and the high ceilings made it feel like they were walking into an arena, not a place for justice. Malcolm's footsteps echoed through the hall as they walked toward his new office, a corner room with a view of the courthouse steps. His desk was already arranged, his files neatly stacked, the gavel sitting in the center like a symbol of the authority he would wield. But even as he took his seat, something gnawed at him. He had been warned about the corruption in Stonebridge, the unspoken rule that the local law enforcement had become untouchable. Officers ran the show here, their power stretching far beyond the law, manipulating cases and silencing anyone who dared to challenge him. Pamela, however, had no illusions. She was here to do more than just watch. She had already begun her investigation, quietly gathering information, listening to the rumors, piecing together the truth. It was just a matter of time before she exposed what lay beneath the surface. As she walked toward a desk, her phone buzzed. A message from her contact in Washington. She didn't need to read it to know what it was about. It was a warning. Keep your head down. Don't stir the pot too much. Don't worry, she muttered to herself. I'm just getting started. Meanwhile, Jaden had made his way to the courthouse entrance. He was still on edge, feeling out of place. The weight of the uniformed officers passing by, the stern looks from the employees, the subtle but undeniable tension in the air, it all made him feel small. But it wasn't until he spotted Sergeant Dale Whitmore that the reality of their new life in Stonebridge truly hit him. Sergeant Whitmore was standing outside the courthouse, leaning against a squad car, his arms crossed over his chest. He had a hard face, the kind of face that didn't care about anything except getting his way. Jaden didn't know it yet, but this man was trouble. Big trouble. As they exchanged looks, Whitmore's eyes narrowed. There was something about the blacks that didn't sit right with him, and he had no problem showing it. He'd been here long enough to know how things worked in Stonebridge. He was the law, and anyone who didn't fall in line would pay the price. The morning air over Stonebridge County hung unusually heavy, as though the town itself was holding its breath. Jaden Steele had risen earlier than usual, dressed sharply, and tucked the court file, forgotten on the dining table by his father, under his arm. It was Judge Malcolm Steele's first official day at the courthouse. The Steeles, still settling into their new home, were filled with hope. Yet, fate had already scribbled something else into the margins of that day. Pamela, his mother, remained in the home office with Malcolm, helping him mentally prepare for court. They had both just kissed Jaden goodbye. The courthouse rose ahead like a weathered monument to justice. White columns, iron gates, and a faded American flag that fluttered wearily in the breeze. Jaden approached, clutching the file close to his chest. At the same moment, Sergeant Dale Whitmore pulled into the parking lot in his dark SUV, windows tinted black, the front bumper still bearing scars from his last high-speed pursuit, or perhaps something worse. He wasn't there to serve justice. He was there to size it up. Word had spread quickly. A new judge was taking over. And not just any judge, a black judge. Whitmore, whose boots had stomped Stonebridge's streets unchecked for years, felt both curiosity and unease. Stepping out in full uniform, badge gleaming, Whitmore moved with a swagger that reeked of vinegar and smoke. Jaden, oblivious, passed through the front gate. Whitmore's eyes zeroed in on him, and the ugly machinery of racial profiling clicked into gear. "Hey, you! What are you doing here?" Whitmore barked, striding over. Jaden froze, startled. The sentence never finished. Slap! The sound cracked through the morning air like a whip. Jaden's head snapped sideways. The file slipped from his hands. His cheek lit up with burning heat. "I asked you what you're doing here, boy," Whitmore snarled, seizing Jaden by the shirt and yanking him closer. Jaden stumbled, stunned and mute. Inside Judge Steele's office, Malcolm and Pamela sat frozen, eyes locked on the surveillance monitor. They saw everything, live. The slap, the aggression, the wildfire burning in Whitmore's eyes. Pamela's jaw fell open, then tightened. "Malcolm," she breathed. He didn't move, but she did. Pamela bolted from the room like a lioness whose cub was under threat. Malcolm rose slowly, adjusting his robe, following with caution. This was delicate. This was dangerous. The law's image had been assaulted in broad daylight. Outside, Jaden fought against Whitmore's grip. "Let go of me," he gasped. "Shut up," Whitmore barked. slamming Jaden against the wall. Think you can just wander around here like you own the place, huh? I was just my dad, Jaden began. And then he saw her. Mom! Pamela's voice ripped through the heavy air. Get your hands off my son! Whitmore turned, eyes narrowing. Ma'am, step back! I'm a federal agent, Pamela snapped, flashing her badge. Whitmore didn't flinch. Slap! The second blow struck Pamela's cheek, sharp and loud. Her head turned with the impact, her eyes widening, not in pain, but in disbelief. You don't tell me what to do, Whitmore growled. I'll lock you both up. Pamela staggered but didn't fall. Jaden screamed again. Mom! Malcolm arrived as Pamela regained her footing, chest heaving, refusing to be broken. Whitmore shifted, noticing the approaching figure in a judge's robe. I said back off, he roared, pulling out his pistol and aiming it straight at Malcolm. Everything froze. No one dared breathe. 3 agonizing seconds ticked by, silent and deadly. Malcolm lifted both hands slowly, deliberately, his movements calm and measured. Whitmore blinked. Reality came rushing back. Consequences loomed large in the silence. Whitmore's arm wavered, then lowered. He slipped the gun back into its holster, offering a brittle, nervous chuckle. Maybe I overreacted, he muttered. He patted Jaden's shirt awkwardly, smoothing out the wrinkles as if trying to erase the crime from memory. Kid's fine, he mumbled. Just a misunderstanding. Jaden pulled away. Pamela stared him down, her lip trembling with fury. Malcolm stood rooted, studying Whitmore's every twitch. Whitmore offered a stiff nod and turned on his heel. Have a good day, he tossed over his shoulder. No one answered. Inside again, Pamela made 2 phone calls. First to Steph. Her voice was low, crackling with urgency. Pull everything you can find on Sergeant Dale Whitmore. I want his entire life under a microscope. And put him on the radar. Then to Lewis. Her voice steadied, sharpened. I need you in Stonebridge within 48 hours. Come ready. Malcolm slumped into a chair, head in his hands. Jaden lingered by the window, the red imprint of Whitmore's hand still searing his cheek. Pamela didn't cry. Not yet, but deep inside her, something splintered, and something far stronger rose to take its place. She had faced warlords, terrorists, agents of chaos, but none had ever laid a hand on her son. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Who is Whitmore? Sergeant Dale Whitmore, 52, the iron fist of the Stonebridge County Sheriff's Department. He's worn the badge for over 25 years and is feared by civilians and fellow officers alike. He walks like he owns Stonebridge and speaks as if his word is the law itself. Reputation, infamous for his aggressive tactics in black communities. Twice investigated by Internal Affairs, both cases mysteriously vanished. Style. Always seen in spotless full uniform, gleaming boots, and carrying a silver-plated baton engraved with the initials DW. Mindset. Believes Stonebridge thrives when people know their place. Convinced the new judge is a state puppet sent to dismantle his system. Followers. A loyal pack of younger officers, calling him Sarge, willing to bend the rules without question under his command. And now, he had just slapped the teenage son of a judge he didn't even know yet, right on courthouse grounds. Stonebridge County simmered beneath its polished surface. The streets looked quiet. Lawns were trimmed. Flags were raised. Storefronts smiled with morning dew. But somewhere beneath it all, the roots were rotting. Old secrets, systemic shadows, corruption so deep it had become the architecture. Inside the steel home, silence pressed against the walls like a storm cloud ready to burst. Pamela hadn't said a word all night. Jaden had cried himself to sleep despite trying to act tough. The slap, no, the violation, replayed in his mind like a broken reel. Every time he blinked, it came back. And Malcolm, well, the Honorable Judge Steele sat on the edge of the bed, robe hung over a chair, Bible open on his lap, hands resting on either side as if bracing for impact. He wasn't just angry. He was shaken. Not because of Whitmore's slap, but because of the look in that man's eyes, the look of someone who believed he was untouchable. But Pamela wasn't shaken. She was sharpening. By morning, she was already on the phone. Steph, talk to me. Stephanie Chu had been Pamela's right hand during 3 counterterrorism sweeps, 2 anti-cartel ops, and 1 assassination prevention mission in the Caribbean. Her voice was crisp, no nonsense. I pulled what I could from surface files. Whitmore's record is clean, suspiciously clean, 0 civilian complaints, no suspensions, no investigations. And get this, 2 bravery awards, both tied to incidents where the other officers present were either reassigned or mysteriously retired. Pamela raised an eyebrow. Ghosts in the file? Exactly. One of the officers listed as a witness to the drug bust in 2017? Dead. Suicide. The other moved out of state. No forwarding address. That's not coincidence. That's cleanup. Pamela's voice dropped. Then it's time to activate the network. Steph hesitated, then asked, "You sure, Pam? You know what happens when we go black?" Pamela looked out the window. Jaden was in the yard, sitting under the tree, looking 10 years older than yesterday. "I'm sure. This isn't just a bad cop. It's a dirty system." She ended the call. That afternoon, she opened the old box, locked, code-sealed, hidden behind layers of family photos and legal awards. Inside it, 2 burner phones, a flash drive, and a slim, leather-bound contact book. She picked up the flash drive and walked to the bedroom. Her laptop whirred as she connected it. Within seconds, a dashboard loaded. Phoenix Network emergency activation required. She keyed in her clearance code, Agent P. Steele Level Sigma. Network unlocked. Names flooded the screen. Former intelligence officers, digital forensic experts, undercover operatives turned civilian. The Phoenix Network had been designed for federal agents whose missions required off-grid, untraceable coordination, used only when official channels were compromised or dangerous. She didn't just want justice. She wanted exposure. Click by click, she sent out coded messages. To Rook in Baltimore, track all electronic activity from Stonebridge PD. Keywords, Whitmore, civilian interaction, excessive force. To Inc. in Atlanta, scrub local news archives. Any mention of police misconduct in Stonebridge from the last 10 years, look for patterns. To Echo in Houston, penetrate body cam storage servers, secure backup footage, especially from courthouse incident. Each message was followed by a single phrase. The ground is moving. Dig until it breaks. Pamela leaned back in her chair. No turning back. Meanwhile, Judge Malcolm Steele sat inside Chamber 4 of the courthouse. He looked at the men seated around the room, 2 black defense attorneys, a young Latina clerk, and a visibly nervous public prosecutor. Another county's black judge had arrived, and everyone was watching, weighing, waiting. His gavel tapped. The court called its first case. But Malcolm's mind was elsewhere. Behind his professional exterior, he was drafting a plan, one where his courtroom would no longer be the final word. He would become a surgical instrument, cutting away the legal weeds that had wrapped themselves around the county's justice system for too long. That afternoon, he requested a sealed file, a civil case from 2021 marked closed. Victim, Jamal T. Morrison, age 16. Cause, resisting arrest. He read through the case. No body cam footage. No civilian witnesses listed. Autopsy sealed. The arresting officer, Sergeant Dale Whitmore. He scribbled a note and slipped it into an envelope. "Pamela," he said when he returned home, "you were right. He's been hiding in plain sight." Pamela looked up from her phone. "We won't let him hide much longer." 3 days later, 3:17 a.m., a secure message came in. From Rook, intercepted audio file, Whitmore in private call. Discusses shipment, uses senator's boys as term. Need more time for voice match. From Echo, body cam footage retrieved. There's footage missing from the day of Jaden's assault. Someone manually deleted segments from the server. Admin access required. Working on reconstruction. Pamela smiled faintly. "He's bleeding." Steph called. "We found his pattern," she said. "Every suspect who died under his custody had priors, but not violent ones. Petty crimes, every time they were alone. No partner, no lawyer present. Most didn't have family to raise hell. It's calculated." Pamela nodded. which means it wasn't just racism. It was cleanup. Easier to kill silence than to fight truth. And guess who funded a bulk of the Stonebridge PD's community enhancement grant 2 years ago? Steph added. Who? Senator Warren Grisham. Pamela sat up. I knew it. Whitmore's just the hand. The head sits higher. Steph's voice turned serious. Pam, be careful. When cops get protected from the top, people who dig too deep disappear. Pamela's response was soft. Let them try. That Sunday, they held a family prayer. Jaden, now quiet and watchful, held both his parents' hands as Malcolm prayed for strength, for clarity, for justice. But Pamela didn't pray for protection. She prayed for revelation. Because once light hit darkness, the shadows had nowhere to run. And in Stonebridge, the shadows were about to be chased down, one corrupt heartbeat at a time. Pamela Steele sat alone in her office, the only light coming from the monitors that lined her desk. Files, both digital and printed, were scattered everywhere, resembling casualties of a long battle. Every document, photograph, and video was a piece of the web they were painstakingly unraveling. She replayed the call again. We've handled 2 of them before, said a calm, calculated voice, Senator Warren Grisham. This judge will either fall in line or fall like the others, he replied. Just like Johnson, just like Kessler. Pamela froze the audio. Her fingers hovered above the desk, rage building in her chest like a rising tide. Johnson and Kessler, both former black judges in Stonebridge, both gone under mysterious circumstances. Now, the pieces were starting to fit. Pamela grabbed the remote and pulled up video footage Steph had found. Lou and Steph were fast asleep in the lounge after taking turns working nonstop for the past 48 hours. But Pamela couldn't stop. Not yet. The screen flickered to life, showing a cold, rainy night. Dashcam footage from DW's patrol car. He sat parked at an abandoned intersection, headlights off, waiting. Moments later, a black sedan, Judge Alastair Johnson's car, came into view. DW followed for 2 blocks, then rammed him from behind. What followed was brutal. The camera captured DW planting a metal pipe near the wreckage and spilling oil on the road, making it look like an accident. But the most incriminating image? DW kneeling at the crash site, wiping his hands, then revealing a blood-stained charred badge. Pamela's voice, barely above a whisper, was steady. This wasn't an accident. It was an execution. She clicked to the next video, older, grainier footage. Security camera footage from a remote gas station, the last known sighting of Judge Kessler. DW appeared, this time in civilian clothes, but his face was unmistakable. 2 others with him, later identified as members of his secret squad. They followed Kessler into the restroom. The camera's view couldn't catch everything, but Kessler was never seen coming out. The coroner had ruled it a heart attack, but the footage suggested otherwise. Pamela leaned back in her chair, mind racing. This wasn't about one rogue officer anymore. It was a decades-old system, fueled by hate and shielded by powerful men. Grisham wasn't just a senator. He was DW's protection. As morning crept over Stonebridge, Lou walked into the office carrying 2 coffees. He set one in front of Pamela silently, noticing the footage on her screen. You found something else, didn't you? He asked. Pamela nodded without looking up. I think we've uncovered an entire underground operation. This isn't just hate crimes or isolated brutality. DW and his men operated a shadow force. No records, no accountability. Eliminating threats and clearing the way for Grisham's control. Lou pulled a chair beside her, his face hardening. Street cams caught frequent trips to an old warehouse down by the docks. Steph ran facial recognition. At least 5 of those entering are listed as missing persons. Pamela opened another grim file. Photos of young black men and women, battered and barely recognizable. Officially ruled accidents, overdoses, or resisting arrest. Every timestamp linked to DW's patrols. And the drugs, she added, they weren't destroyed. They were recycled, pushed back onto the streets. DW ran Grisham's street network, terrorizing black communities with fear and addiction. The biggest breakthrough came when Steph stumbled across forgotten internal memos. A retired Stonebridge cop, silenced long ago, had left notes. Terrence McDougal. Before disappearing, he detailed an elite unit inside the force, reporting only to DW. They wear badges, McDougal wrote, but they don't serve justice. They serve something darker. His file ended abruptly. No retirement, no transfer, no farewell. He simply vanished. Pamela stared at his final memo. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. DW has eyes everywhere, but someone has to expose them. Someone must speak for the dead. That afternoon, Pamela called an emergency meeting. Judge Steele, Lou, Steph, two senior agents from the federal task force. She laid out the evidence, the murders, the conspiracies, the network, and the intercepted recording. Grisham and DW plotting against Malcolm Steele, referencing the judges they had handled. The room was heavy with silence as the tape finished playing. No black man dictates in Stonebridge. We made that clear years ago. Pamela rose to her feet. This is no longer a local matter. This is a national shame, and we end it here. Operations were launched. External federal agents were embedded under deep cover. Surveillance intensified. Families of victims, long silenced by fear, were finally stepping forward. Pamela also brought in forensic analysts to secure and verify all evidence, ensuring it would hold up in court. She tasked Lou with creating a detailed timeline of every case tied to DW in the last 15 years. Her office wall quickly became a grim tapestry. Names, faces, events, all linked by dotted lines. In the center, Sergeant Dale Whitmore's photo, pinned below the Stonebridge County Police badge, now a symbol of betrayal. Late that night, Pamela recorded a private entry. Justice isn't just an idea anymore. It's a process, and we're walking every inch of it, for the silenced, for the buried, for those robbed of a sunrise. Exposure was imminent, but danger loomed closer. The deeper they dug, the more desperate DW's loyalists would become. Pamela knew the real fight hadn't started yet. This was only the calm before the storm. In Stonebridge County, whispers had always floated in the air. Whispers that would fall silent the moment anyone came too close. A place where the breeze carried hidden truths, and justice often stumbled, especially if your skin was dark. In the early dawn, when mist wrapped the streets and the courthouse square stood deserted, it was as if you could hear the ghosts of past wrongs sighing through the town. For generations, Stonebridge presented a gleaming smile to the world, but underneath its polished surface was a system that punished color and sheltered cruelty. Pamela Steele now fully understood it. The deeper she and Lewis dug, the more undeniable it became. Dale Whitmore wasn't simply a racist. He embodied the decay of an entire system, and the rot had begun long before him. Pamela's office had transformed into a war room of files, digital archives, video evidence, and hidden testimonies. Her agency had assigned more agents and resources than ever to what they now labeled Operation White Dust. Because DW's actions weren't just sporadic misconduct, they were the work of a systematized extermination. It started with patterns. Lewis spent hours cross-referencing years of arrest records and uncovered a horrifying trend. Over 90% of Whitmore's physical arrests targeted black men. The body cam footage Steph had managed to unlock only reinforced it. DW was brutal with his hands, his baton, and even the grip of his gun. If the suspect was black, DW morphed into a merciless predator. There was the young man in his 20s, accused by DW of walking suspiciously, thrown violently to the ground, beaten until he spat blood, and abandoned without charges. There was the single mother yanked from her vehicle in front of her children for supposedly disobeying traffic instructions. No charges filed, no apology extended. And the decorated veteran stopped right in front of his own home, tased and handcuffed simply because he resembled someone else. Pamela reviewed every clip. She documented every case, Yet it wasn't until they stumbled across the hospital records for Kendrick Lawson, a 17-year-old who had died 2 years earlier following a savage encounter with DDW, that Pamela almost broke down. The official report blamed cardiac arrest during struggle, but the leaked scans told a different story. 3 fractured ribs, a punctured lung, and blunt trauma to the head. Steph glanced up from the report, her voice unsteady. "They buried this?" Pamela gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles pale. Not anymore. Adding to the outrage was another discovery. An internal memo from a black officer within the Stonebridge PD who had filed a complaint accusing DW of targeting minorities and falsifying reports. That officer was demoted shortly after and eventually forced to resign, his voice effectively silenced. Pamela tracked him down, Officer Jonathan Keyes. He was now living in Atlanta, working in private security. When Pamela called, his voice trembled with emotion. "You're the first person to ever ask. I thought I imagined it. I thought nobody cared." Pamela answered, steady but firm. "We care, and soon the whole world will hear your story." Meanwhile, DW's paranoia grew. Ever since the botched stunt at the courthouse, the atmosphere had shifted. More eyes inside the department were on him. Conversations hushed when he walked by. His calls with Senator Grisham became more desperate, filled with hurried, coded language. Pamela had by now legally tapped several of their communications with court approval. One particular call between DW and Grisham sent chills down her spine. "If we don't get rid of Steele soon," Grisham barked, "we'll be dealing with another Malcolm X. What we did with Johnson and Bell might not cut it this time." DW chuckled nervously. "Let me handle Steele. It's the wife that's the real issue. She's persistent." Pamela filed that recording under a special folder. Intent to harm, high alert. Pamela's thoughts drifted back to the past. Judge Bell. Judge Johnson. 2 black judges who once served Stonebridge. Bell's story was widely known. He had abruptly resigned, citing health concerns. But Pamela now held the hidden truths. Anonymous threats, menacing letters, a staged drug bust designed to blackmail him into silence. When Bell refused to bend, he was framed, an envelope of cocaine planted right inside his chambers. He resigned quietly, choosing to protect his family over fighting back. Judge Johnson's fate was even darker. A staged car accident, now unmistakably proven to be murder. DW had been there. His body cam showed him inspecting the wreck, but the footage revealed more. The bloodied gloves, the slight nod to someone off camera, and the judge's badge crushed into the dirt. Pamela rewatched that footage countless times. Each time, her resolve grew stronger. Armed with all this evidence, Pamela took everything to her agency's director. They escalated it immediately, placing the entire Stonebridge Police Department under federal investigation. But just before they could act, a new leak arrived. An anonymous insider within Stonebridge PD sent Pamela a thumb drive. Inside, photos of a whiteboard, DW's personal hit list, names, faces, all black. Some names were crossed out. One name was circled in red, Jaden Steele. Pamela froze. Her son, the boy DW had assaulted and threatened. What rose inside her wasn't just fury, it was a firestorm. Pamela understood now. There could be no more waiting, no more files gathering dust, no more working in the shadows. She picked up the phone, called her director, and got the final go-ahead. Arrests, raids, asset seizures were greenlit. Before hanging up, Pamela said words she had never dared to speak aloud. "This isn't just about Dale Whitmore. It's about what Stonebridge became. A breeding ground for hatred. We're not just saving one town. We're setting a new standard." And so the wheels of justice began to move, slow but unstoppable. The early morning sun stretched long shadows across the courthouse steps. Stonebridge County, once wrapped in a false peace, now simmered with hidden tension and unspoken truths. But Pamela Steele wasn't the kind to let silence fester where truth needed to roar. Inside the judge's chamber, a different kind of trial was underway. No robes, no gavels, only files, encrypted drives, and whispers of deep conspiracy. Pamela stood at the heart of it all. The evidence had been stacking up: hidden surveillance footage, falsified police reports, and most damning of all, a recorded call between Sergeant Dale Whitmore and Senator Warren Grisham. That call was the thread that could unravel everything, and it now sat safely tucked away in Pamela's private archive. For now. Lewis, her loyal partner from the agency, adjusted his earpiece as he entered with fresh intel. His eyes were sharp, his expression grim. "We found a trail," he said. "It's deeper than we imagined." Pamela lifted an eyebrow. "How deep?" He dropped a thick, worn folder onto the table. "This isn't just about Whitmore anymore. Grisham's been manipulating Stonebridge for over a decade." Pamela flipped through the file. Photos, bank transfers, fake case closures, silenced witnesses. "Don't say it." "Grisham," Louis confirmed. Pamela's grip tightened around the papers. The more they uncovered, the uglier the truth became. The so-called honorable senator had built his empire with blackmail, blood, and fear. DW had merely been the muscle. Grisham was the mastermind. Pamela stepped away from the desk, massaging her temples. "He's been right under our noses." Louis nodded grimly. "And now he's getting nervous. That call you intercepted? It was supposed to be untraceable, bounced through a ghost line. He knows someone's onto him." "Good," Pamela muttered. "Let him sweat." At that same hour, Senator Warren Grisham sat in his plush Washington office, sipping a dark espresso as the Capitol buzzed outside his soundproof windows. To the world, he was a man of honor, a patriot, a servant of the people. But inside, anxiety gnawed at him. The call with DW had left a footprint. He could feel it. He rose from his chair and stared at framed photos of past campaigns, shaking hands with presidents, kissing babies, cutting ribbons. All a facade. Behind the scenes, he had pulled the strings on countless careers and buried many secrets. Stonebridge was his fortress, a place where his influence was law long before a judge ever spoke. But now, a federal agent was digging. A judge had walked onto his chessboard and brought with him something dangerous: truth. Crossing the room, Grisham unlocked a secure cabinet and pulled out a red folder. Stamped boldly across the front was one word: steal. Inside were surveillance photos, background investigations, intercepted emails, and movement logs, all tracking Malcolm, Pamela, and Jaden Steele, a family reckless enough to challenge him. Grisham grabbed his phone and made a call. "Is the team ready?" he asked. "Yes, Senator," came the reply. "No mistakes this time. Make it look like a botched break-in. Start with the boy." Back in Stonebridge, Pamela was reviewing footage with Steph when her secure line buzzed, an emergency-only signal. She answered immediately. "Agent Steele." "Ma'am," said an unfamiliar voice, "we just flagged an attempt to access your son's school and medical files. High-level clearance request. It was disguised as an internal audit." Pamela's heart dropped. "Who authorized it?" "Your name. But we confirmed it wasn't you." Pamela shot to her feet. "They're targeting Jaden." Steph's face paled. "We need to move. Now." Pamela was already dialing. "Jaden, sweetheart, listen to me carefully. Where are you?" Jaden, standing outside the school library with earbuds in, paused his music. "Mom, about to go inside." "Turn around. Go straight to the front office. Don't talk to anyone. Louis is on his way to pick you up." "Is everything okay?" "No. But it will be if you do exactly what I say." Without hesitation, Jaden started moving. "I trust you." Pamela exhaled, her resolve hardening. Louis was already grabbing his car keys. "They're stepping it up." "And so will we," Pamela said firmly. "If they want to play in the dark, we'll flood it with light." Later that night, in a dim underground garage beneath the Capitol, Pamela, Louis, and Steph met with a senior official from the Bureau of Internal Security, someone who had long suspected Grisham but never had enough proof. Pamela laid everything out: the call logs, the DW files, the Judge Johnson evidence, and now the attempted attack on Jaden. The official sifted through the material, his face hardening. "You understand this could collapse half the county's leadership?" Pamela nodded. "And expose half the capital's dirty money, too. We're ready." The official took a breath. "I'll activate a task force, quietly. But if any of this leaks before we're ready, Grisham will disappear." Pamela leaned in. "We're not leaking. We're hunting." Over the next 72 hours, Stonebridge was infiltrated. Agents installed in every major office, phones tapped, movements tracked, and in the shadows, Grisham's empire began to tremble. He tried contacting DW, no response. He tried calling the sheriff, gone. He even reached out to his fixer in Texas, line dead. His power base was crumbling, piece by piece. And Pamela? She was only getting started. Every document uncovered, every ally recruited, brought her deeper into enemy territory. Not with fear, but with fire. Grisham had cast a long shadow over Stonebridge for years, but now a new dawn was breaking, a dawn fueled by justice, by vengeance, by truth. And as the pieces locked into place, Pamela knew Grisham's shadow was shrinking. Soon, it would vanish forever. Pamela hovered over the secure line of her agency phone, her fingers pausing briefly before pressing send. It was time to move. Her voice, calm yet commanding, traveled through the encrypted channels like a battle cry. "This is Agent Pamela Steele. Operation Obsidian is officially greenlit. I repeat, we have confirmed breach-level corruption within Stonebridge County law enforcement, with interference from a sitting U.S. senator. Full federal deployment requested. Stonebridge PD is compromised." The answer came almost immediately. The Bureau had been poised for her signal, and now it was go time. Commands crackled across secure networks like wildfire. By noon, black, unmarked vans streamed into Stonebridge County from 3 separate directions. Armed federal agents in plain tactical uniforms moved out with crisp, practiced precision. No sirens, no announcements, just a silent, calculated takeover. Within an hour, the entire Stonebridge Police Department was shut down. Badges were surrendered, offices secured, every system and document placed under forensic lockdown. For the townspeople, it was as if the sky itself had torn open. The once dominant force that had ruled them unchecked for generations was being quietly dismantled before their eyes. From the courthouse balcony, Pamela observed the unfolding operation. There was no feeling of victory, only a cold, unshakable determination. The true enemy still remained beyond reach, cloaked behind Capitol walls and political shadows. Miles away, Senator Warren Grisham watched the breaking news unfold across 3 separate screens, each displaying a different angle of Stonebridge's collapse. His face remained a mask of polished calm, but inside, rage churned violently. Snatching up his phone, he barked into it, "Get the DOJ liaison on the line. I want this buried. Immediately." His aides leapt into action. Drafts of statements were rushed out. Calls were fired off. A damage control narrative was spun. Stonebridge was undergoing a temporary federal review due to administrative mismanagement. But the narrative didn't stick. This time, the truth pierced through. Within hours, national journalists began digging deeper. Targeted leaks from Pamela's team were strategically released, each one meticulously timed, exposing layers of the corruption that no loyal media outlet could ignore. Grisham's name began surfacing in headlines, not as a hero, but as the hidden hand behind the chaos. And that's when panic started to set in. Later that night, hidden in a secluded location just outside Stonebridge, DW met privately with Grisham. No badges, no radio chatter, just 2 men watching their empire unravel. "She's closing the noose," DW muttered, voice low and grim. "We have 1 move left." Grisham's gaze didn't waver. "What?" Looking him dead in the eyes, DW said, "We staged the assassination of the Steele family. Make it look like an extremist group did it, a break-in. No evidence, no survivors, all ties severed." A heavy silence stretched between them. Grisham finally gave a grim nod. "Do it." Unbeknownst to them, someone else had been listening. Luis, who had been tracking DW's movements for days, had planted a listening device on the vehicle they used. Every word of their conspiracy was captured. Back at Pamela's safe house, Luis played the recording for Pamela, Malcolm and Jaden, who sat tensely nearby, jaw tight with anger. Pamela's eyes burned with fury. They're planning to kill us. Louis nodded grimly. Let them try. He pulled a folder from his bag labeled Echo Trap. We bait them. Controlled environment, full surveillance. The second they make a move, we shut it down. Pamela didn't even blink. Let's make sure it ends right there. The following night, just after midnight, a black SUV crept toward what was supposed to be the Steele's countryside home. From the outside, it appeared abandoned, dark, lifeless, no activity. Two masked figures exited the vehicle, rifles at the ready. A van lurked a few yards back, hidden among the trees. As they crept toward the house, infrared sensors locked onto them. In the woods, federal sharpshooters quietly took up their positions. Inside the house, no steals, just decoys. Military-grade heat signature projections designed to fool amateur hitmen or corrupt officers. One of the masked men cracked open the front door, only to trigger a tripwire. Instantly, smoke grenades exploded, and drones swooped in, flooding the area with blinding lights and disorienting noise. Within seconds, the whole property was awash in floodlights, federal agents closing in from all directions. The attackers didn't stand a chance. Inside a nearby command vehicle, Pamela watched the live feed, arms folded, voice steady. We got them. Louis flashed a grin. Grisham's plan just crashed and burned on national surveillance. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Grisham received a chilling encrypted message. Operation failed. Agents in custody. Full media exposure. Prepare for containment. He stared at the screen, stunned. Pamela hadn't just countered his attack. She had turned it into a death blow. The board was now hers, and checkmate was only a few moves away. The Capitol's sun shone with deceptive peace the morning blonde. Judge Malcolm Steele took his boldest legal action yet. After weeks of gathering damning evidence, enduring personal attacks, and navigating the deep corruption entrenched in Stonebridge County, he officially escalated the case against Sergeant Dale Whitmore and Senator Warren Grisham to the Capitol State Court of Justice. This wasn't a simple lawsuit. It was a criminal trial of national importance. Every major news network fought for the inside story. Protesters filled the courthouse steps waving signs, some demanding justice, others accusing a political hit job. Yet the Steeles weren't swayed by the noise. They were driven by truth. Inside, the courtroom thrummed with restrained tension. Presiding was the Honorable Denise Miles, renowned for her unforgiving stance against abuse of authority. She peered over her glasses at the preliminary files. Malcolm sat at the prosecution's table, not as a judge today, but as a witness, a father, and a plaintiff. Pamela sat beside the state's lead prosecutor, her demeanor cool but alert, her bag brimming with evidence they had painstakingly collected. Jaden, still quietly processing the trauma, radiated a quiet, growing strength. His ordeal had become the heart of this battle. Then, the courtroom screen flickered to life. Pamela rose and introduced Exhibit A, courthouse surveillance footage from Stonebridge. On screen, young Jaden appeared, clutching a folder. Sergeant Dale Whitmore approached. No questions, no reasons, just raw aggression. D.W. struck the boy, grabbing his shirt, barking accusations of loitering and suspicious activity. A wave of gasps rippled through the courtroom. This was my son, delivering his father's work file. He spoke no words, committed no crime. Exhibit B followed. The footage showed Pamela arriving, alarmed at her son's distress, stepping between them, and being slapped across the face by Whitmore. D.W.'s voice blared from the video. "Back off, woman, or I'll arrest you." Pamela repeated the word coldly, "woman," unaware he had just assaulted a federal agent on federal property. Then came the chilling moment, Judge Malcolm Steele, still in his judicial robe, intervening. D.W. turned, drew his service weapon, and aimed it squarely at Malcolm's chest. A judge. Inside a courthouse. The courtroom froze, transfixed. Pamela's voice wavered slightly. "My husband, Your Honor, a sitting judge." This was not misconduct. It was terror under color of law. The footage continued, DW lowering his weapon once recognition dawned, fumbling to straighten Jaden's clothes, mumbling an apology as he retreated. Every word, every frame had been preserved. Now, it was laid bare before the nation. Next, Pamela introduced audio recordings. One especially damning clip, a call intercepted from Senator Grisham's private line. His voice, low and unmistakable, declared, "We handled the last 2 black judges in Stonebridge, didn't we? Steele won't be any different. Make noise. Get buried. Like Johnson." A horrified gasp filled the courtroom. Even the court stenographer faltered. Pamela turned to the room. Judge Johnson's fatal car crash wasn't an accident. We have body cam evidence showing DW on scene, wiping blood from his hands. The wreck was orchestrated. The evidentiary barrage continued. Body cam footage showing DW's history of racially targeted brutality, never once brutalizing white citizens while black victims were abused, framed, and vanished. Leaked files linking DW to a clandestine gangster squad running narcotics through police channels, hidden in patrol cars and secret safe houses. Financial dossiers, compiled by Steph, Pamela's trusted intelligence operative, exposing payments from Grisham's accounts to DW's offshore holdings, witness tampering, and judicial coercion. Testimonies from former Stonebridge officers, finally emboldened to speak, revealing a hidden reign of terror. Meanwhile, DW's gangster squad members were being picked off one by one, arrested by federal marshals in the days leading up to the trial. Pamela had orchestrated it all. In the courtroom, DW now sat isolated inside a bulletproof enclosure. Gone was the bravado, the sunglasses, the cocky grin. Only a hollow silence remained. Senator Grisham, though absent, loomed heavily over the proceedings, his name now fused to a chain of corruption, violence, and betrayal. When the exhibits ended, Judge Miles leaned forward, voice firm. This court finds probable cause to proceed to trial under the following charges: assault and battery, police brutality, unlawful use of a firearm, obstruction of justice, drug trafficking and conspiracy, premeditated murder of Judge Alastair Johnson, racially motivated terrorism. The courtroom sat breathless. Pamela turned to Malcolm. He answered with a proud, subdued nod. Jaden squeezed her hand, eyes fierce with hope. Justice hadn't yet been served. But for the first time, Stonebridge's towering fortress of corruption was crumbling. And the first stones had been laid bare for the world to see. The courtroom buzzed like a hornet's nest on the day Sergeant Dale Whitmore took the stand. 2 weeks had rolled by since Pamela's explosive revelations had rocked the courtroom and exposed the rot in Stonebridge County. Since then, the nation's attention had locked completely onto the scandal. Primetime news segments, endless TikTok breakdowns, everywhere. People were glued to what was now called the Stonebridge Uprising, a story that had exploded from isolated abuse into full exposure of deep-rooted racism and political corruption. Out in the courthouse lobby, protesters waved banners high. One sign shouted, "No justice, no peace." Another bore DW's mugshot plastered above the word terrorist. The mood outside was electric, charged with a wild mix of fury and hope. Inside courtroom 1, Judge Denise Miles again sat firm at the bench, composed and unshakable. Pamela sat poised next to the federal prosecutor. Malcolm was seated just behind them, still in his formal robes, standing tall both as a father and as a symbol of judicial strength. Jaden, still healing from the ordeal, watched from a secured private box. And Dale Whitmore? He wasn't in uniform this time. He wasn't giving orders. He was shackled, brought forward in cuffs, his face drawn, his steps dragging. The man who once wore swagger-like armor now looked like a hollow shell, haunted by the wreckage of his own deeds. The prosecutor wasted no time. "State your name for the record," he demanded. DW licked his dry lips, voice raspy. "Sergeant Dale Whitmore." "Former sergeant," Judge Miles corrected crisply. "You have been stripped of that title." And so the unraveling began. The prosecutor fired the first shot. Mr. Whitmore, on March 14th, did you physically assault Jaden Steele outside Judge Malcolm Steele's courtroom? DW fumbled. I don't recall, he said weakly. Roll the footage, the prosecutor ordered. The lights dimmed. The screens lit up. Everyone watched again. The slap, the rough shove, the weapon drawn. Silence hung over the courtroom like a heavy curtain. The prosecutor leaned in sharply. Still don't recall? Should I refresh your memory about what came after? Threatening to shoot a federal judge right on courthouse property? Whitmore's mask cracked. I didn't know who they were, he cried out. And if they weren't the Steeles, would that have made your action? The prosecutor hammered. DW stumbled over his words. No, I mean, yes, I was under pressure. The department. Which department? The prosecutor pressed in, voice sharp. Stonebridge PD or the Black Cobra unit moving drugs you supplied? The room gasped. Sweat gleamed on DW's forehead. He blinked hard, panic flashing. I only followed orders. I didn't build it. Then tell this court who did. DW froze, glancing over his shoulder like he expected backup that wasn't coming. Swallowing hard, he leaned forward and said, voice trembling, Senator Grisham. He gave the orders. He funded it all. The prosecutor pounced. Funded what, Mr. Whitmore? DW turned his hollow eyes toward the jury. Everything. The drug ops, the gang squads, surveillance on judges, even the accidents, the crashes, the disappearances. Grisham paid for all of it to stay hidden. Pamela's fists curled tight. Without missing a beat, the prosecutor faced the bench. Your Honor, we request an immediate federal subpoena for Senator Warren Grisham. Judge Miles didn't flinch. Approved, effective immediately. The news broke within hours. Warren Grisham, still seated in the U.S. Senate, was handed a subpoena live on C-SPAN just as the evening session was closing. The footage spread like wildfire. Memes flooded every corner of the internet. One viral post read, "From power to prison?" Another showed a smug campaign photo of Grisham next to a doctored mugshot. But for all the jokes, this wasn't comedy. It was justice in motion. 3 days later, Grisham arrived at court. He was flanked by a team of elite lawyers, his steps heavy, his face drawn tight like a noose. For the first time in his long political career, he didn't command the room. In a sharp custom Navy suit, his tie perkily knotted, Grisham took the stand. But the sweat on his brow betrayed the nerves he couldn't hide. Pamela stood to lead the examination herself. The judge had granted her a temporary bar exemption, acknowledging her unparalleled knowledge of the case. Senator Grisham, she started, were you aware of a rogue police unit operating within Stonebridge County? I was not, Grisham answered, stiffly. Pamela produced a bank statement. $150,000 wired to Whitmore Security Consulting, LLC. That's your signature, correct? Grisham shifted uncomfortably. I donate to many law enforcement initiatives, he said. Pamela nodded coolly. Understood. Let's review another. $60,000 for community stability coordination. Paid just 4 days after Judge Johnson's mysterious death. Care to explain? His lawyer sprang up. Speculative. Overruled, the judge said firmly. Grisham's voice cracked slightly. It's a coincidence. I didn't know. Pamela didn't blink. She pulled up another piece of evidence onto the overhead screen. A photograph appeared. Grisham and DW, lounging at a luxury villa, cigars in hand, surrounded by gang squad members. The timestamp was unmistakable, 2 days after a fatal raid in South Stonebridge. The courtroom collectively gasped. Pamela's voice remained calm. Still a coincidence, Senator? Grisham broke. His voice rose, cracked by panic. You don't understand the pressure we were under. That town, Stonebridge, it was a powder keg. We had to control it. Pamela cocked her head. And by control, you mean murder, bribes, and racial profiling? Grisham lost all pretense of control. We kept it from burning down. You people don't know what it's like, he roared. A heavy silence fell across the courtroom. You people. 2 words that sealed his fate. Pamela stepped back smoothly. No further questions. Judgment Day. The trial continued for another 4 days, but the verdict was already cemented in the hearts and minds of the people. By the time the judge reconvened, millions were tuned in via live stream, hanging on to every word. Judge Miles inhaled slowly before delivering the judgment. Dale Whitmore, this court finds you guilty on all counts: assault, conspiracy, police terrorism, first-degree murder. You are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison with no parole. D.W. collapsed into his chair, sobbing silently. The same man who once patrolled the streets armed with a badge and unchecked power, now brought to justice and caged by it. Then Judge Miles turned to the senator. Warren Grisham, this court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with a federal criminal trial under charges of conspiracy, corruption, and accessory to murder. Your bail is denied due to risk of flight. Gasps filled the courtroom. Grisham screamed, "You can't. You can't do this. You can't do this. I'm a senator." Judge Miles replied coldly, "Not anymore." Footage of DW's sentencing and Grisham's dramatic arrest made headlines worldwide. Protesters gathered outside the old police department in Stonebridge. This time, not fueled by rage, but by relief. Jaden returned to his school in the capital, accompanied by a security escort and embraced by a community that honored his quiet courage. Malcolm resumed his role on the bench in the Capitol, more respected than ever before. And Pamela? She was approached by federal officials with an offer to lead a new task force dedicated to rooting out embedded racism in law enforcement. She accepted without hesitation. In the Steele family living room, the three of them sat together, watching the final breaking news banner scroll across the television screen. Stonebridge cleans house. Whitmore jailed for life. Grisham removed from office, faces trial. The reckoning begins. Jaden leaned against his mother. "Is it over?" Pamela looked at him with a steady gaze. "For us, yes. For others, just beginning." Malcolm nodded firmly. "We didn't just survive. We changed the system." And outside their home, for the first time in a very long time, Stonebridge County slept in peace. For the first time in decades, the halls of justice in Stonebridge County echoed not with fear or hushed corruption, but with quiet hope. The trial of Dale Whitmore and the fall of Senator Warren Grisham had become more than just a scandal. It had become a turning point. An entire system, once built on silence and intimidation, had finally been torn down in the open. And at the center of it all stood Judge Malcolm Steele. A man who had once questioned whether he could truly make a difference now sat behind the bench at the Capitol's federal courthouse, praised across the nation as a symbol of judicial integrity. His image, composed, dignified, appeared on magazine covers and television specials. Yet behind his solemn gaze was a heart still healing. Malcolm hadn't returned to Stonebridge since the trials concluded. His former courtroom had been renovated, new security, new staff, new protocols. But it was never about the walls. It was about the memories they held. Still, Malcolm knew justice was no longer just an ideal. It had taken root, and he had helped plant it. Stonebridge County may never be the same again, but justice, once awakened, cannot be silenced. Thank you for walking this journey with us, but the fight for truth is far from over. If this story shook you, if you believe in standing against injustice, then don't just watch, become part of the movement. Hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. Tell us what moment hit you the hardest. Share this story with your friends, family, anyone who needs to hear it. And invite them to join our growing community, because together we amplify the voices that others try to silence. More powerful stories are coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. See you in the next chapter.